If this story touched your heart, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to see how far our stories reach. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss tomorrow's special story. It's one you won't want to miss. Every day, a new tale unfolds, filled with love, drama, and surprises. Be part of our growing storytelling family. See you in the next chapter. It was a chilly Saturday morning in downtown San Francisco. The sky hung low with gray clouds, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves scattered along the pavement. Logan sat quietly near the corner of a small cafe, tucked under the awning to avoid the cold mist in the air. Dressed in a worn-out jacket, faded jeans, and shoes that had seen better days, he looked like any other forgotten face on the street except for the calm kindness in his eyes. He wasn't begging. He never did. Instead, he watched the world pass by, businessmen in suits, couples with dogs, and tourists with cameras, all rushing to somewhere. Lost in their own worlds. Just across the street, a young child, no more than 6, had wandered. Away from his mother, drawn by the colorful balloons of a nearby vendor. Within seconds, the mother realized, screamed his name, and ran forward in panic, but the little boy was now stepping dangerously close to the busy curb. Logan saw it happen. In a flash, he stood up without thinking, dropping his paper cup of coffee that someone had kindly given him earlier. Sprinting across the sidewalk, he reached the boy just in time, scooping him up before he could take one more step into the street. The mother arrived seconds later, breathless, with tears in her eyes. She took her son into her arms and looked at Logan, overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you so much," she whispered, her voice trembling. Logan simply nodded, giving a small smile before stepping back to his quiet spot under the cafe's awning. What he didn't to know was that someone else had been watching from nearby. Isabella had just stepped out of the cafe after picking up her morning latte. Wearing a long beige coat and ankle boots, she had the unmistakable air of someone born into privilege, but there was warmth in her eyes as she stood still, holding her cup, watching the scene unfold. She didn't know who Logan was. She only saw a stranger clearly struggling in life, leap to help without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. No one else had moved. People had stood frozen, shocked, afraid. But he had acted as she watched him walk back and quietly sit down again. Isabella felt something stir within her. Curiosity, admiration, a quiet ache that whispered, "There's more to this man than meets the eye." She didn't approach him that day. Not yet. But from that moment on, she couldn't forget his face, the kindness in his eyes, the steady way he held the child, the way he melted back into the crowd without seeking praise. What began as an ordinary morning soon became the spark of an extraordinary connection, one that neither Logan nor Isabella saw coming. In that moment, that quiet act of courage would be the first thread in a story that would change both of their lives forever. Isabella couldn't stop thinking about him. For days after that morning outside the cafe, his image stayed with her. The way he moved without hesitation, the calm in his voice, the strength in his hands when he lifted that child. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story. But something about him felt real in a way that her polished world never quite. To the next weekend, she went back. Same time. Same place. She walked slower this time, her eyes searching until there he was. Sitting in that same spot, quietly sipping from a cup someone must have given him again. He looked rough, sure. But there was dignity in the way he sat, the way he kept to himself. Not a trace of bitterness. Not a trace of pride. She bought a second coffee, walked over, and offered it with a small smile. "Hey, I saw what you did last week," she said. "That was brave." Logan looked up, surprised, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, he said, "Nothing." Then, quietly, "It wasn't brave. Just the right thing to do." That's how it began. They started meeting by that cafe first, with coffee and simple conversations. Logan, guarded but polite. Isabella, curious and drawn in deeper. Each day, She learned that he'd once worked in construction before an accident took everything: his job, his apartment, even his health insurance. No family, no safety net. He'd been trying to climb out ever since, but what she didn't tell him at least not yet, was who she really was. Isabella wasn't just some random girl with time to kill. She was the daughter of Arthur Kensington, CEO of Kensington Technologies, one of the biggest names in Silicon Valley. She lived in a mansion 30 minutes away, a place with marble floors, 4-car garages, and cameras at every gate. Her life was full of fundraisers, formal dinners, and conversations about stock prices she barely understood. Logan didn't fit that world. Not even close. And when her father found out she'd been hanging around a homeless man downtown, all hell broke loose. "Absolutely not, Isabella," he snapped, slamming the newspaper down one evening. "You don't know him. You don't know what he's after. He could be dangerous." "He's not," she argued. "He's kind. He saved a child's life." "I don't care if he saved the president," her father barked. "You're not going back there." Her mother stayed silent. Her brother rolled his eyes. No one saw what she saw. No one felt what she felt. To them, Logan was a threat to their image, a stain on their perfect world. But to Isabella, he was something more. Someone more Dot, and as she sat alone in her room that night, staring out the window, she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't walk away from Logan, even if it meant walking away from everything. Else Isabella didn't go back the next day, not because she didn't want to, but because her father made it impossible. Her phone was taken. Her schedule was suddenly full. A surprise family weekend in Napa was announced like it was a royal decree. Every move was watched. Every excuse was questioned. And every chance to sneak out was blocked. But Logan stayed in her thoughts. The sound of his voice, the way he looked straight into her eyes without a trace of judgment or agenda, it haunted her in the best way. Meanwhile, Logan noticed her absence. At first, he told himself not to expect anything. People like her, they don't stay. They come for a moment, make you feel seen, then vanish back into their polished lives. Still, he waited. 1 morning, 2, a week. She never came. By the end of that second week, something in him hardened. He shook the thought of her and focused on what he could control: his future. With the last $50 he had, Logan walked nearly 3 miles to a local temp agency. He stood in line for hours, filled out every form, and practically begged for anything at all. By some miracle, a warehouse night shift had just opened up. $16 an hour, 5 nights a week, moving boxes. Not glamorous, but real. It was a start. The first week nearly broke him. His feet blistered. His back ached. He had no reliable shoes, no decent meals, and barely 4 hours of sleep each day. But Logan pushed through it shift after shift, dollar after dollar. He saved every cent he could. No cigarettes, no drinks. Just peanut butter sandwiches, bottled water, and a dream. He found a small room for rent in a shared house 10 blocks from the warehouse. It wasn't much, just a twin bed, a cracked mirror, and a flickering light bulb, but it was indoors. It had a door that locked. And for the first time in years, he had a place to rest without fear. All this time, Isabella searched. She created a fake email account, reached out to a local charity group working with the homeless downtown, and asked about a man named Logan. Nobody had seen him lately. Her frustration grew with every dead end, every blocked message, every time she glanced out the window and wondered where he might be sleeping that night. Then, by accident, she found him, driving home late from a dinner she didn't even want to attend. She saw him walking down the sidewalk in a reflective safety vest, carrying a bag of groceries, sweat on his brow, pride in his stride. She pulled over, rolled down the window. "Logan?" He stopped, turned slowly. And when their eyes met again, something unspoken passed between them: shock, relief, and something else. "I thought you were gone," he said quietly. "I never wanted to be," she whispered. And just like that, their worlds touched again, not through fate this time, But through fight Dot after that night on the sidewalk after, their eyes met again, and time seemed to freeze. Logan and Isabella stood in silence for a moment that said more than words ever could. She didn't press him with questions. She didn't make any grand declarations. She just handed him the bottle of water from her cup holder and said softly, "You look like you're working hard." He nodded. "Trying." They sat on a bench outside a closed bookstore, the city lights buzzing above, the world strangely quiet around them. He told her everything about the temp job, the small rented room, the peanut butter sandwiches, the long shifts at the warehouse. About how, for the first time in years, he felt like he was climbing out of the hole. And Isabella listened, really listened. From that night on, things changed. They met once a week, always after his shift. Coffee if he could stay awake late night. Walks when he couldn't. She never offered money. He never asked. But her presence was fuel, a reminder that someone believed in him. That he was no longer invisible. Logan saved every paycheck. Within 4 months, he had $8,000 in the bank. By month 7, that number had grown to over $15,000. He stopped renting the small room and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near Market Street. It had heating, a small kitchen, and a secondhand couch that he assembled himself. For Logan, it felt like a palace. He bought a used Dodge Charger beat-up, but reliable. And every dent on the hood felt like a badge of honor. But none of this came easy. There were nights he couldn't sleep from back pain. Days when exhaustion clawed at his ribs like hunger. Sometimes he stared at the ceiling, wondering if it was all just temporary, if everything could fall apart again in a single moment. But each time doubt crept in, he thought of her Isabella smiling at him like he mattered, like he wasn't his past. Meanwhile, Isabella was fighting her own battles. Her father had grown suspicious again. He noticed the late nights, the secretive smiles, the sudden independence. One night, during dinner, he asked bluntly, "Are you still seeing that man from the streets?" She didn't flinch. "His name is Logan, and he's not from the streets anymore." The room fell silent. Her father scoffed, muttering something about fairy tales and mistakes. But this time, Isabella didn't back down. "He's built everything." From nothing, without help, without shortcuts. Can you say the same? That night, she packed an overnight bag and left. She showed up at Logan's apartment just after midnight. No makeup, no drama. Just tired eyes and quiet resolve. "I'm not here because I ran away," she said. "I'm here because I finally chose something for myself." Logan didn't say a word. He stepped aside, letting her and Dot in that small, imperfect apartment filled with secondhand furniture, hard-earned dreams, and 2 very different hearts. Something real had finally taken root. Not built on luck, not fantasy, but on grit, trust, and a love neither of them saw coming. The next morning, Logan woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. For a second, he thought he was dreaming. But there she was, Isabella, in his tiny kitchen, barefoot, her hair in a messy bun, wearing one of his old hoodies like it belonged to her. She turned around, smiled sleepily, and said, "You didn't have any cream, so I improvised." That morning was simple but unforgettable. 2 mismatched mugs, 2 scrambled eggs, 2 hearts figuring out what came next. But the world didn't stay quiet for long. By noon, Isabella's phone buzzed with over a dozen missed calls. Her father, her mother, even their family lawyer. Her father's voice finally came through in a sharp text. "Come home now or don't come back at all." Logan saw the message. "You didn't ask her to choose." He just looked at her and said, "Whatever you decide, I'll be okay." But Isabella had already chosen. She wasn't a teenager rebelling for fun. She was a woman claiming her life. And this time, she wasn't going to let fear or a last name decide who she could love. Still, she knew it wouldn't be enough to just choose Logan. If this was going to work, she needed her family to see him. The real him. So she came up with a plan. The Kensington family hosted an annual charity gala every December, a black tie event where tech giants, politicians, and old money gathered to sip champagne and talk about changing the world from the comfort of million-dollar suits. Isabella had never missed one. This year, she would bring Logan. He hesitated at first. "That's not my world," he said, looking down at his worn boots. "No," she replied. "But maybe it needs someone like you." They spent 2 weeks preparing. Logan borrowed a suit from a friend at work, got a clean haircut, and practiced small talk with Isabella every night over dinner. He didn't fake who he was, he refined it. And when the night came, he walked into the grand ballroom with her hand in his shoulders straight, his head held high. People stared. Whispers followed. But Logan didn't flinch. When introduced to Isabella's father, Logan didn't try to impress him. He just offered a firm handshake and said, "Sir, I know I'm not what you expected, but I love your daughter, and I'm not going anywhere." There was a long pause. Tension thick enough to slice. Then, surprisingly, her father nodded once. "Coldly, I see," he said. Nothing more. But the next day, Isabella got a text from him. "He's not like the others. Let's talk." That was all they needed. It wasn't full approval. Not yet. But it was a door finally cracked open. And for Logan and Isabella, that meant everything. They didn't need perfect. They didn't need permission. They just needed a chance. And now they had a in a world built on status and expectations. They'd carved out something real, earned with grit, grown with patience, and sealed with love. If this story moved you even just a little, we'd love to hear from you. What part of Logan and Isabella's journey touched your heart the most? Was it Logan's quiet strength? Isabella's courage to choose love over comfort? Or maybe it reminded you of someone in your own life, a person who took a chance, fought through judgment, and loved fearlessly? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Your perspective matters more than you know, and we truly want to know where you're watching from. Type your city, your country. Let's see how far this story reaches. And if you believe in stories that show hope, resilience, and real love, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's episode is even more powerful, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. You are part of this storytelling family now. So speak up, share your voice, and let's grow this community together, one story, one comment, one heart at a time.